Hi guys, it's Ola from Cool Mentors IT. Get ready because we are moving on to discussing more advanced topics than basic data types. And for today, it's going to be variables, and we will introduce the concept of scope. And it's very important that you kind of understood everything about variables, because we're going to be building up on top of that has been discussed ages ago, weeks ago, about variables. Although we're gonna do a mini revision on variables, and so do not worry. Yeah, I hope you enjoy the material.
I have no doubt of that.
What's a variable? A variable has kind of three properties. So it's got its name, like an ID, the way you can find your variable in the program. It's got its value. Even if you didn't assign a value, it's going to receive a value of undefined. And also it has its memory space. It is somewhere in the program. The value of a variable can be of a certain type. And we were almost getting bored with the basic data types, and we've discussed them all apart from the symbol. But for those of you who are super ambitious and want to know all about the symbol, you go on and you explore. And the reference data types that we haven't discussed yet, these are objects. So how do we create a variable? We have three keywords, and all those are variables, but they have kind of different characteristics. And so we have a var, we have a let, and we have a const. And for today, it's still not going to be our a target topic. And for today, we are still going to focus on a variable with the keyword var. Until 2015, there was a keyword var only. We didn't have a let or a const, and only after 2015 it all got a little bit more complicated. But it's all for the best, because variable created with the keyword var had its limitations, and so we were in the need of a let and a const, and you will find out about it soon. So how do we create a variable? So it's a two-step process, and the first step is a declaration. We declare our variable, and we either give it a value or a variable will get automatically by JS will get a value of undefined. So for instance, we have a variable age, and after a comma we can that way we can create many variables. We don't need to every time put the keyword var. It's enough if we put just one var, then age, and then after a comma another name for a variable, username or user ID. It's all good. The second step in the process of creating a variable is when we initialize our variable. So this is the moment we actually assign a value to a variable that already exists. So in this case, we created a variable and it got a value of undefined automatically because we didn't give it any explicit value. And here, we don't have to use a keyword var here because the variable age has been already declared, and here we're just assigning a value of 45. Or here, similar, got a variable username that has already been created, and we just are giving it a value of a string, in that case Bob.
Oh, great!
So as I said, there's no need to, actually it would be wrong of us to put a keyword var here if we have already declared that variable, as is declared on here. We have created that variable here, and so later on when we want to assign a specific value to that variable that already exists, we don't put a keyword var. Nothing here, just username and Bob or age and 45. What is needed to create a variable with a value and assignment operator? So it's an equal sign and obviously a specific value, so the value we have decided upon, or our user has decided that his username will be Bob. So it is a two-step process, but in fact often, or most often, most commonly, it's going to happen all at the same time. So we have a variable, let's say surname, and we give it a value of Barker, like straight away, not later on, but right away. We are communicating to the program, hey mate, I'm going to create a variable called surname and I'm giving it a value of Barker, and it all happens right away. Or in here, creating an object, those curly braces mean this is an object, got a variable with the ID player, and then it's got two properties, got a name, Charlie, and age. And so it's also like this two-step process, but all at the same time. Got a name and assignment of an object in that case. How to name a variable? So, well, there are different rules I've got grammatically. So to make it grammatically correct, we need to bear in mind that JS is a language to identify what case you've used. So letters are case sensitive. If you have created a user with a small letter and another user with a capital letter, these are two different users. This is not the same. So if we try to evaluate whether it's the same thing, it's going to evaluate to false. So it can start, variable can start either with a small or with a capital letter, with an underscore or a $sign. This is all good. It's just not very common, I guess. Mostly like small letter, not underscore, and probably not a $sign in the case of JS. Numbers may be used. Yes, we're good to go with a digit as a character in our variable's name, but not as a first one. What's more, do not use spaces. If you want to use spaces, use an underscore, like in the example, user underscore name. And last but not least, there are a number of reserved words, like, for instance, a function or a variable or true. So if you want to create a variable, you can't name it var or true or function, because they're like actually pretty good number of words, like quite a lot of them. But it isn't really necessary for you to memorize them or look for them. It all comes naturally because the console will throw an error. If you try putting a variable and call it a function, it's going to throw an error, and so you will know that that's no way to do it.
Not gonna happen!
And grammar is important, but also logically. We try giving our variable's name a meaning. So instead of creating a variable A that doesn't actually tell you anything, or your colleagues or your future self, if that variable is meant to store age, it's good to name it age. As easy as that. And also camel case, camel notation, quite common, or those underscores, whatever is best for you. But if you have like 2 words in your name for a variable, it's better to divide it by like user and status rather than user status. $sign is okay, but even though it's not so popular these days, jQuery, it's kind of like customarily or like convention that we save that $sign for jQuery. So what we'll be discussing in the next classes, next tutorials will be totally devoted to a variable scope. Today we will cover a part of the topic of a local and a global scope, hoisting, that's not for today, and differences. Finally, we'll find out what are the differences between var, let, and a const. And yes, we're coming to that funny time in the life of a future developer that will often think, well, it doesn't work, and why? But even more often you will see that your code works, and then also you won't know why it works, and you'll also be like, why does it work? Our target topic for today, scope. We have a global scope and we have local scope. And what scope in general? So scope is like for you to know, we create a variable and then we need to know if from what place in the program we can access our variable, from where it can be seen, and how can it be referenced, or which part of the program doesn't see our variable. And it's like every programming language has loads of mechanisms that are necessary, like absolutely necessary for you to know in order to become a good developer. And this is like crucial that you understand the scope. Topic is super important. So got global scope and a local scope, and so a variable that is in a global scope can be seen everywhere in the program, whereas local variable can only be seen inside the function. Oh, and also very, very important that at this point I am discussing only a var, variable created with a keyword var, because I'm leaving the next time let and a const, and these are different. So this is only applicable to a var, only to a var. So yes, global variable var can be seen everywhere in the program. Local variable can be seen only inside the function. So here I've created like a symbolic like representation of like these are supposed to be functions. So these have their borders. So these normally would be communicated by the curly braces, but this is like a mini island here, and so whatever is in the mini island stays on that mini island. And as you can see, I've created like 3 variables a, and they all called the same a, but they store different values. And when it comes to variables created with the keyword var, these are not like these are all separate variables, all separate entities. So I've got 3 variables and they all called a, and they all store a different thing, and These are like 3 different variables: Joey, Ross, and Rachel. And these would represent this local scope, because these only exist within the borderline inside the function. Joey exists only here, Ross can be seen only inside this function here, and Rachel can only be seen inside this function here.
This is my apartment and I like it!
That's called local scope, because it's only inside the function. Whereas my variable a that is storing a value of JJ Monster is a global variable. You see, it's like these are the islands and this is the ocean, and it's like kind of visible everywhere. It's everywhere. Those only on those mini islands, and JJ Monster is like literally everywhere in the program. So far we have like worked on the console from our DevTools in the browser, but for today I thought we could mix it up a little bit, and so I thought we could open our editor. I downloaded Bracket, and so I thought it would be good if you did the same thing. Download Brackets and work alongside me. So here I got basic HTML document. I've got head, I've got body, and to write our JS script we don't actually need a separate file. We can just put it inside the body element in the HTML file. Here's the side that is opened, and at the bottom you can see my DevTools. I'll make it bigger. Okay. And the next thing, I'm just gonna paste some code. Copy that. Okay. And so we haven't actually covered functions yet, so I'm gonna make a mini introduction for those of you who have no idea what is happening here. And so I've created a variable a and I gave it a name of a global variable. Then I've created a function. Function is created, this is a keyword function, and it works similar way to a var, as like one of the reserved words that can be only used when you create a function. So I put the keyword function, then this is up to you, this is the name. You can come up with a different name for your function. And to signify that it is a function, we need to put those empty brackets. Well, not necessarily empty, but in this case we don't put any arguments, so these stay empty. Then block of code inside our curly braces inside the function. And so inside the function I've created another variable a, and I gave it the name of a local variable, because here we have a variable that is inside a function. So it's like this symbolic island. And I instructed a function. This function will console log the value of a variable a. And then, well, this doesn't do anything just yet. It's just a declaration. I've got a variable created and a function, but they don't do anything just yet. Our function will be executed once we put the name in brackets. So here I'm executing my function 1, and after I execute my function 1, I try console logging value of a. So let's try to do it. So I'll try saving it, and I'll try refreshing the site. And so what we have in here now printed out is a local variable, and right after it a global variable. So what happened here was, firstly I executed function 1, and that function was supposed to console log the value of variable A, and it took the value from its scope. So it took that variable, local variable, and that's what printed out to the console. Later on, I asked the program to console log value of a variable A, and in that case it printed out a global variable, meaning it took the value from that top variable A, here, global variable. So that's what happened.
So that's what happened.
Local value is not visible outside its scope, whereas global value is visible everywhere in the local scope. And well, got the variable A, and A is invisible because it's just a local scope. If we try printing a value of something that is inside the function, it's not going to print out, it's not going to show, because it's actually impossible to see it. And it's completely different for a global variable, because global variable that is not declared inside the function, is outside the function, can be visible everywhere. We can access it everywhere and we can reference it everywhere, and quite often it's compared to you being at home. So if you're inside the function, it's like you're inside your house. You can look out the window and see, oh wow, I like this thing that I see out there, and you can go out and you can get it. But someone who is like outside the house cannot go inside your house and get anything they want from inside your house.
Up in your crib and eat your food. Kick their boots off and treat y'all rude, dude.
It's like it's only available to you because you're in the house. So you're inside the function. When you are inside the function, you can use everything that is available to you, and you can also go out and get things from outside your house. But it can't happen the other way around. So if you're outside the house, there's a stranger outside your house, they can get in your house and get whatever they want, unless they are burglars, but that's a different story. Normally they can't. So in the local scope, whatever is in a local scope cannot be seen outside that local scope. Whatever is in the function is only inside the function. Whereas something that is globally available is globally available, and it can be seen everywhere, referenced everywhere, and that kind of variable can be used anywhere in the program. Right. Let's go back to the bracket and give you a different example. I'm gonna paste something in here. So what's happened this time? I have my variable A is a global variable. It's still declared in the global space, and I've got my function 1 that I'm only asking to console log A, and then again I'm executing my function 1 and again trying to console log A, whichever A is available. What should happen in here? So this A is visible everywhere because it's a global variable. It has a global scope. Then a function 1, so it's like our house, and we can get anything we want. There is no other variable declared inside the function, so this a would take its value from a global scope because it has nothing to take from inside the function. So it should theoretically print out twice global var. So let's check if it actually works. That's great because it printed out global variable twice. So we have a global variable here and another global variable, because from inside the function we can take anything we want from outside. So this function printing out console logging value of a would take the value of variable a from outside. And then when we try console logging a, it would of course take the value of variable a because that's the only variable a it can see. Another example would be, I have prepared them in advance so you don't have to see me struggling typing. I haven't declared a variable in the global scope. I only have a function 1, and inside the function I declared a variable a, and of course it has a value of a local variable because it's inside a function, and then console logging a. So what should happen in here?
Anything could happen.
Let's save it. Let's refresh. So we have first it printed out a local variable, but later on we've got uncaught reference error, a is not defined. So what happened here? We tried executing function 1, and our function 1 was supposed to console log a. So console log a, I'm reading a, I'm taking it from my local scope, and so the value read was local variable. That's why we see a local variable printed out in our console. Got a local variable, and then the next instruction to the program was to console log a. And because we are outside the function, it cannot access anything that is inside that function. And there is no variable declared in a global scope, so hence a is not defined, because at this point it doesn't exist. Because this variable a here inside the function, it doesn't exist to the program. Like, it cannot access it. So I hope it's kind of clear the mechanism of scope, function scope. Because so far it all has been, so far it all has related to variables created with the keyword var, but we also have let and const. And for instance, there's a problem with a variable, with var variable, because it doesn't deal with the if statements and for loops. For instance, it's called block scope, and this will be discussed in a lot more detail later on, but for now I just want to introduce this concept called block scope. Is signified by the curly braces, which variable created with a var keyword doesn't read as a function scope, because it's not a function. again, I'll let the code speak for itself and let it do the work of explaining. Paste it here. So what happens in that code here? Well, I've created a variable and I gave it a value of nothing, and then I created an if statement. So if that thing in the parentheses is true, which I already gave it a value of true, so the condition is met. So if this is true, variable a would be something. And then I try console logging its value. So what happens here? It's printing out something, meaning that variable a is now something. So if you understood the logic from before, like if something is inside the function, we don't have access to it from the global scope. So I tried console logging a, and if this was a function, it would take a value from here, from the global scope, and not from here. But in this case, we're actually like redeclaring variable a, and so this variable a and this variable a, it's the same variable, and hence it's printing out to console something, because those curly braces, these is a block scope that the variable created with the keyword var doesn't deal with. So it's like it doesn't exist. It's not applicable in this case. So to show you why it's a problem, I'll give you another example. But in this case, I will use the keyword let, and that would be our introduction to a let. Now, this part of the code, the first part didn't change at all. It's still the same. And the second part of the code is all new, brand new. This is the first time we are using the let instead of a var. And I've got let b is nothing, but if true, let b be something. And then console log b. And yep, what happened here is that let and const, for that matter, they both have a block scope. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a function for the scope to be local. So in that case, that let b here is it's local to this environment. So for the console log that is in the global space, it can only see that variable from here. That is nothing, and that's why it printed out nothing. First, something is coming from the console log A, and then console log B has returned a value of nothing, because this is in the global scope, and this, even though it's not a function, it wouldn't read its value because it's a block scope. And that's how let dealt with the problem that var couldn't. And just so you can see one other thing, if I put console log b here, save it and refresh it. Now it's gonna print out different things. So what happens in that code now is that first I'm trying to console log A, and it's giving me something. So var A has been redeclared, and it's taking the value from here because it doesn't see that there is a block scope. It doesn't have a block scope. It has a function scope, so this is ignored, that it's inside the if statement. Then we have console if true, let b is something, and I want to console log that value of b, and because the statement is true, it would console log immediately. It would console log the value of b, that is something, and at the very end of our script, I'm console logging b, and that value is taken from the global scope because let has a block scope. I hope I didn't confuse it too much.
I'm not confused, it's just you making me think.
But just go through the examples and we will elaborate more, and I'm sure it will all clarify soon. Thanks.